Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Zazu Payne, my new enemies to lovers archetype that I met while playing Codenames Live. Zazu is everything from a biomedical engineer, a board game enthusiast, and what he calls a friendship guru. But what really stands out about him is his unique perspective on community and how faith has shaped his approach to human connection. In our conversation, we explore what it means to truly see the beauty in others, the power of authentic relationships, and how sometimes the strongest friendships start in the most unexpected places. Let's get into it. All right. This week on Friendless, I have someone who, I've only met once I defeated him recently on Codenames Live.
That's how we're starting it?
That's how we're starting. Just brand new connection. Someone who we it felt like we really clicked in the show. Someone who I hope to someday call a friend. But I don't know if we're necessarily there yet. But yeah, the one, the only Zazu Payne. How the fuck are you today?
I'm doing most excellent, and we are friends.
Yeah. Okay.
On Facebook, we're Facebook friends. That's as deep as it gets for some people. I feel like,
You never want to be, I'm definitely of that mentality personally, but it's like you never want to overstep, never want to be, I think for me personally too, it's like I meet people and I'm like, oh, I immediately like you. Can we just be best friends? But like, not everybody's that, like, they don't have that kind of like
For sure,
German Shepherd energy, right?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So in the intake form, I wanted to ask you about this. In the intake form, you list your kind of your Chiron as across the board, and it's incredible. And I
Yeah,
want to read some of these out. Uh, Biomedical engineer, board gamer, musician, disciple, which I really like, creator, athlete, and the reason you're on the show, friendship connoisseur. And
yeah.
that just really runs the gamut here, and so summing all that up leads me perfectly to my opening question of Zazu, who the fuck are you?
I am all those things you listed. Foremost, disciple. I love God. And that's kind of led me to friendship, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a selfish guy. I was born a selfish guy. Like my sisters, my parents, they would all tell you the exact same thing. And then I went from selfish to like just kind of closed off.
Mm.
I was young, really young, but yeah, I started to see like, oh, there's a little bit of like, there's something about everybody that's just like so unique, so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Even the people that you don't like or annoy you, you sit with them long enough and you find like, oh man, never seen
Mm-hmm.
that, never saw that. Like you're an
Hmm.
awesome person, and I think that's that little piece of God we all have in us. So
Yeah.
first foremost, disciple. Second, like friend, because people are the best thing this world has to offer, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
if you can be an enemy or a friend, I think friends the better path.
Hmm.
So
I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that. I love that. And I really like the idea of like it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently is this idea of like the more lonely you are, often that means, the more you personally need to learn tolerance. Do you know what I
mm.
mean? Right?
Oh
And
yeah,
so it's like it's often, in moments of isolation for myself, I've found internal excuses for why it's other people's fault. And more and more over the last couple of years, I've been trying to turn that as like moments of introspection of like, what is it that I'm causing?
yeah,
And how can I then reach out for help, right?
oh yeah.
And I'm curious about, yeah, how do you take these sort of philosophies and kind of put them out into the world? How do you apply them in practice?
When I meet somebody, just like me, we met that one time.
Mm-hmm.
We're friends, like already. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
loved you before I met you, and I met you, and I loved you more.
Yeah.
And if I meet you and I hate you, then there's something wrong with me, right? Like
Yeah.
so, even if it's maybe you're just a dickhead, but but I put it on myself, like I didn't give
Sure.
them a fair shake. We could be in a room full of people, and I hit it off with 9 out of 10 of them, but I'm gonna call that 10th person. But hey, you wanna go to breakfast? Like just to
Yeah.
see like what don't I like about this person? And it's
Yeah.
always 100% of the time like there's always some common ground.
Yep.
I've never walked away with somebody and we're like gonna kill each other the next day. It's always
Yeah.
something that they had chip on their shoulder, I had chip on my shoulder.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, it's such an interesting conundrum right now because I feel like, with the state of, look, you're calling in from America, I'm calling in from Canada,
yeah.
and it's like there's all kinds of like incredibly high tension things going on in the world.
Oh yeah,
And so sometimes there's a bit of a wedge between the sort of like the philosophical theory versus like how it actually gets put into practice. But I do often find myself leaning more towards the sort of the theoretical of like there's got to be more connecting us than disconnecting us,
yeah,
and um the trouble I encounter is like how do you apply that in the real world with people who are actively trying to cause not just harm but like violence
yeah,
and you right
yeah,
and
yeah.
how do you find those connective tissues with those kinds of people?
I root it back to I truly believe there are some evil people in the
Mm,
world, but few and far between.
yeah.
And that's kind of where it starts. I'm like, man, like, is this person evil? Like,
Mm.
we we somehow ended up in the same spot. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you got there, like,
Yep.
but you go to a party, like that person knows somebody in this room. Like,
Hmm.
they didn't jump out of a taxi cab and like knock on the door and like somebody let in a stranger. So
Yeah.
it's that piece of it. And then like I said before, like I mean, my belief system says like I was created by God. So
Yeah.
there's some godly quality to you, whether it's been snuffed out or you've renounced or you don't want anything to do with. There's something good in you.
Yeah.
Um, so
I love that. I love that. Oh, Zazu, we're cooking. I love
we're like
this.
best friends,
Right,
right?
right,
Like
exactly, right there,
we went
immediate.
from the question mark to the exclamation mark.
I want us to go back to another piece, though. Obviously, I razzed you at the top about code names, but that really links into another element. On the show you talked a lot about the board games you play, and obviously, yeah, as you said, that something brought you to that room, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you could tell me a little bit more about sort of your past. What's your history with board games, and is that what led you to Codenames, or how did you end up there that night?
I ended up there. So this is a long story that I'm going to make short because it's not
No, you know
super
what?
interesting. It's just
Honestly,
long.
it's why we're on a podcast. It's for
Let's do it.
give it the medium size at least.
So in high school, there's a thing called Young Life.
Hmm.
I had a buddy Mondo who was a Young Life leader. It's like a Christian organization. They go in the school. Basically, we just go and hang out.
Okay,
But every once in a while, there's you read a verse or two.
sure.
So I met him in 12 years, 10 years later. We're on Facebook. I'm like, it's pandemic. I'm playing Xbox like too many hours of the day. So I'm like, let me
Sure.
sell this Xbox.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do. And the person that buys it off Facebook Marketplace is my buddy Mondo,
Whoa.
who I hadn't seen in 10 years. And he comes over. I got like a little shrine of board games.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, you play board games?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "Cool, me too. You should come over. You should have a game night." Um, and so I go, and he's like, "Man, you're very charismatic. Like, I'm doing this TikTok thing, and it's going pretty cool. I just show people games, talk about design." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, no thanks." I did the media thing for a while. I was doing music. I'm not really into it.
Hmm.
And then a couple times after him pestering me, he shows me it's like 40, 50, 60,000 people following. I'm like, "Oh shit, you're like legit. Like you got it going on." He goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." So he slowly starts introducing me to people and gets me involved, and I
Yeah.
start doing videos. And so Tim reached out to him because he's obviously a big deal. So Tim
Yeah.
knew him, and so I was on with him, and he's like, "Hey, like open invitation. Like you've been a guest, now you can come on and host your own team."
Hmm.
And yeah, the rest is history, man. I just took advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Have you been on many times or?
That was my second.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
so you're okay. Gotcha.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so I'm so out of the loop of that stuff. I feel like I owe Tim more attention than I end up giving him.
yeah. How do you know
you know,
Tim?
honestly, it's a really similar story. A really dear friend of mine, Brian, who again, funny enough, he's huge on TikTok. He's you might have seen a video. He his most recent really big one was about hoisin sauce and going to the store and always having a bottle of hoisin sauce, and it turned into a song and it's
I gotta
been
check him out.
memeified. He's the best, the Beanoff. He brought me on as a guest, and then Tim said come back, and then I keep on somehow sneaking my way into to more episodes. He keeps on
Nice.
bringing me back, right? Yeah. The world of you're tapping into I was just talking with Sam, actually. Sam Murdoch was just on the show,
Okay.
the mod
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Codenames, and we were talking really in depth about sort of these communities around like video games and board games, and how they kind of maintain themselves, but then how there's also even within the subcultures, there's a lot of like infighting, and there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
like,
Oh
right,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd be really curious to hear your sort of, let's start there. Like, um, what is your kind of experience with? Let's start with board games and work our way out to video games, because I feel like those are bigger,
Okay.
And
Okay.
but how has been your experience with the sort of the community of the subculture of board games, and how do you yourself kind of show up within that or maintain that community?
So we just got back. So Gamma Expo, the game
Hmm.
manufacturing expo. First time there. I was told by a couple of people, like, yeah, it's not really something for content creators. It's mostly retail and blah blah blah. I was like, I'm just gonna check it out.
Yeah.
Needed to see my cousin. He lives in Kentucky, where they host it. So I went, and man, it's just crazy. Like I've been doing it a year and a couple months, but through Mondo, through Tim, through other people that I meet, I'd make a hard connection really quick.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna be friends no matter what, but we're gonna be like closer than some of your friends you've known forever. Just
Yeah.
with the way we're communicating, the way you're communicating, asking. Like if you were here in Atlanta, we'd be in my kitchen right now doing this. Like
Totally.
I'd
Totally.
like I'd be like, James, come over, let's hang.
Yeah.
So through that, it's like you get that energy, and it's contagious. Like
Yeah.
people introduce me to the people they like, and I introduce you to the people I already met. So I've been doing it a year. There's people been doing it, a decade, and I'm just
Sure.
kind of like, and it's a gift and a curse. So I don't really I got a lot going on, as you saw on that sheet. So I
Yeah.
don't dive all the way into anything. So
Yeah.
everybody I'm meeting, it's like I'm meeting, like I've never seen their content. I don't know what they
Sure.
do. They're just a human being,
Yeah.
and I'm me, and we meet, and there's sometimes people they see that as refreshing. I've had two encounters where they were like, you don't know who I am.
Right.
One of the guys is, and we're cool now. Like I said, when I meet somebody like that, I give him the chance. But yeah, he's like, you don't know who I am, and he had 100x the following I have. But I was like, no, like, how would I know you?
Yeah.
And he just never shows his face on camera. And I went and looked, and I was just like, oh, that's you are cool. Like, I'll follow you. You're not following me, and that's what
Yeah.
ticked him off. But
Yeah.
it's just how I roll, and it
Yeah.
makes, maybe I'd get nervous otherwise. So I do it also for selfish reasons, like
Yeah.
I like to be on an even plane with folks.
But I think that that's refreshing. Like
Yeah,
I've found, like, in my very fleeting and far between encounters with real celebrity, the people I've met who I just like talk to like a human were always much more engaged than the people who I came to with like, oh my god, you're
yeah,
right. And I was trying to remind myself that it's like everybody's just a person,
yeah,
it's something I think a lot about recently. Actually, there's been a lot of there's a lot of, I mean, it's always happening, but recently I've been seeing a lot of vitriol around certain celebrities, around, what they sort of owe their audience, and this sort of demand for celebrity,
yeah,
and I find it really misses the point, because it's like an artist, from my perspective, an artist doesn't owe you anything. They've already given you the thing that you like.
right. That's why
Now
you're
that art is
there.
yours. Exactly, right?
Yeah,
So it's not a one or the other. It's a symbiosis, and there's a balance. And I think the problems come when one side expects too much of the other.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, so
Cue Kanye West,
well,
like,
Jesus Christ, right?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Somebody, I
god.
was like, dude, I can't like. I literally like I can't consume anything he does outside
Yeah.
of me. Like I go to him for music. That's it.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm. Even that is like there's a hard cutoff,
yeah,
like even
yeah, and
that is
it's
yeah. Yeah. And it's been a long time since that cutoff started,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's I mean that he's god damn. I don't know if I've even fully to this day fully reckoned with the kind of like almost like the grief of losing an artist like that from my life,
yeah,
because like
yeah,
he was so massive for so long. I remember picking up College Dropout, on the CD when it
yeah,
first
yeah,
came out, and just being like, it's one of those moments where you're just like new doors of your brain are opened,
yeah.
and you're just like, oh fuck, this is what art could be, right?
Oh yeah,
And then yeah, to see where he's at now is just, oh
yeah. You just
man. Like,
yeah. It's interesting,
I'd be curious about your perspective too, because Atlanta is such a such a hotbed for music, especially
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. We
culture
get
in
all the
general.
concerts. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a recording here in
Hmm.
Nashville. Like people just come, so we get all the concerts. But nah, it's cool, man. You get to meet people. Even with that. Oh, here's a hot take or some advice for the audience.
Yeah.
One thing I realized doing music, and meeting people that are famous, semi-famous, how you the level you're standing at when you meet somebody, like that's the part of the first impression that sticks. So if you come up to
Yes.
somebody as a fan, like you're always a fan of them. You come to someone as a peer, you're a peer to them. If you
Mm.
come to somebody as a mentor, you're a mentor to them. And even like no matter which way the relationship flows, that's kind of in the back of your head and their head, and it kind of sours things. That's another reason why I just don't like to fan out
Yeah.
at all. But yeah, it's cool just approaching somebody. My favorite thing was sitting in the green room, like open for somebody long after I'm not supposed to be in there anymore. The
Yeah.
headliners are like clear the room, but I always just go back like, oh, let me go get my hat or whatever, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
hey, how's it going? Like, oh, the stage pretty good, crowd's pretty, and you were just talking like
Yeah.
mano a mano, and they see you around there, it's like, oh, they like wave, and everybody just like,
Yeah.
Skrillex? I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, we
Technically,
we
yeah.
shared a stage,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I was in there, like, oh, can we get a pic? Can we get a selfie? It's
Yeah.
everything changes after that. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, first impressions.
Man, oh my God, I always you're giving me one of those moments I always describe on the show. I always call them spider web moments because it makes my brain go into like six different directions, but I have to decide one sentence, right? But it really, it's you're touching on this idea of like how you show up in the world affects how people see you, and how people show up in the world affects how you see yourself.
Yeah,
Like it's this cyclical thing, and it's something I've really discovered through the years of doing the show, is that it's like these questions of, we're going to get to them eventually, but these questions of how we show up in the community, how we show up for our friends, how we do for others, really actually originates in how do we do that for ourselves first. How do we tend to our needs, how do we tend to ourselves, and how do we hold ourselves up so that we can present, whatever version we want to, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I guess I'm curious, how building off that idea, how do you find yourself, how do I even put it, how do you find yourself building yourself up to be able to hold yourself in those kinds of spaces and to be able to show
building
up like that?
myself up. Ooh.
Do you know what I mean, right?
It's
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's something
Yeah.
I wrestle with.
Yeah.
Um. I guess being a man of faith, it's uh, depending on certain. It's like say you're getting in an argument, or no, say you're in a fight,
Yeah.
and you're getting in a fight because someone did somebody wrong and you're defending them.
Hmm.
Like you come in with like you're the good guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then they're the antagonist, and so whatever thing in my brain puts me in that mood sometimes, where I'm like, hey, I'm the good guy here solving a problem, and gets me a little prideful. And then there's other times where like I'm I'm working for my buddy. He owns an ice cream company, and we're at a mixer. He literally brought me on because networking and stuff is a superpower of mine.
Yeah.
So he's a data guy. He needs somebody, and I'm talking to these people, but my true intent is just to like hook them and get him some clients. So
Yeah. Yeah.
not necessarily an antagonist, but like, but yeah, like so. Then I'm like, oh, I'm here to help him, but also here to not manipulate, but spin a web, get them interested in his
Yeah.
product, and
You're
move
Obi-Waning,
forward.
you know?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all like a mental thing beforehand, and kind of checking myself to see how I'm approaching.
Mm,
But the struggle now is like, hey, I just need to come to people like honest, open, and blank, and it's been paying like dividends. Like
mhm.
because you can sustain a fake relationship, like or a
Sure.
work relationship or an acquaintance, but you connect with somebody like for real, like you're really interested in what they have to say, they're really interested
Mhm.
in what you're doing. It's just smooth, man. You
Mhm.
can vibe and
Mhm.
call them later or ask for a favor, and it's all good. But I find when I come with some alternative intentions, it's
Mm.
it dies on the vine. Like
Yep.
that night's the last night I'm gonna see or talk to them. That's why I reached out to you immediately.
Yeah.
I was like, James is cool, man. Like,
Yeah. Right? Right?
yeah,
Well
yeah,
well, and I feel like you're speaking to I think the way I would almost say it is this idea of like showing up with authenticity, right? Because it's
yeah,
like I feel like it's something so I in my day job I teach a part of my job is career prep for my students. So it's like things like, resume and cover letter, but it's also interview prep.
yeah,
And it's this idea of like, yeah, you can lie on your resume to get in the room. That's fine. Like I don't give a shit. But the reality is if you have to lie to get yourself in the room, you're going to hate that job no
yeah,
matter what it is, because you're never going to be able to show up as yourself.
yeah,
And so you've got to just get into the spaces where you can be as authentically yourself as possible, because if people respond to that, that's the best sign. And
yeah,
if they don't, that's no fault of either of yours. It just means those authenticities don't click, and that's doesn't mean either of you are bad people. It just doesn't work, right? But if you can be who you are and that meshes, like that's the sweet spot, right?
How many students do you run into that don't know who they are?
All of them. I think the simpler number would be how many don't, right?
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, or I should say how many do. Yeah, no, but it's like it's tough. It's really tough, and I
Yeah.
think it's something I'm seeing. I'm starting to creep into. This has been a reoccurring joke over the last couple of interviews that like I'm not old, but I'm starting to creep into that era of my life where I'm almost at you know what are these kids doing on my lawn
Yeah,
phase,
yeah,
right? And I am seeing these generational shifts where it's like the idea of sort of like the idea of speaking honestly online is very different from speaking honestly in person.
yeah,
It's way more intimidating for them, and that's no fault of theirs. I think that's a we trained them poorly. I think that's a
yeah,
societal failing. We failed them, not they're failing us.
yeah.
And I
We
don't
we
know
do
how
that
to.
as well.
Oh, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's just
They're
it.
just doing it with people they'll never ever see, and it feels a little safer. But it's that sharing with a stranger on a park bench versus confessing to your sister, your brother. Like there's just
That's it.
things that
Yeah. No, that's it right there. That's exactly it.
yeah.
It's just different tools, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, That really actually, you know what? I feel like so we're dancing around a few different kind of like pockets, but they're all linked to this one of these anchor question words that I'm always scratching at. It's this word of community, right? And like,
Mm,
as I'm always talking about on the show, it's one of those words that we hear all the time, we use all the time, but can be so widely defined.
yeah.
It can mean so many different things to so many different people, and I'm so fascinated by the personal experience that each person brings with that word, and so I'm really curious for you, what does community represent, and how do you find yourself, um, kind of nourishing the communities you want to be a part of?
Community is a good cult. No central
Love
leader.
it.
We've agreed to a set
Yep.
of standards.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I like that one. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that'd be my podcast name, The Good Cult, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, it's something necessary that a lot of people lack, and you can tell when they lack it.
Yeah.
It's very, very apparent, that they're in an echo chamber of whatever sort, and
Hmm.
no introspection. Like you said, you really like it's hard to do that by yourself. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's even possible to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
It's your community that like sharpens you and critiques you and
Hmm.
makes you better for yourself and for them. So it's just one of those necessities that unfortunately is one of the things just of all the online access we have.
Yeah.
You can go a long time without it and think you're okay, and then
Hmm.
you find problems elsewhere pretty quickly when the world is knocking at the door.
Yeah. Whoa, you just scratched at something that I find so fascinating. Again, it's another one of those like it's almost like reverse psychology things of like to learn about yourself, you kind of have to be around people, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you kind of can't like it feels like you have to go into seclusion and you have to like, climb a mountain and take a vow of silence and just look at yourself for a while, but like and like those things will help, but like they're not like they don't actually teach you how to tolerate discomfort, right?
yeah,
Because when you're alone, you're safe. You have no one triggering you. You have no one pushing against you. You're in a complete soft bubble.
yeah,
And yet you're also deeply unsafe because to be alone is counter to what like we as humans are supposed to be, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I just really love the reminder of like to learn about yourself, you have to be around people, and you kind of in a way have to be around people who don't totally agree with you either, right?
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
I
It's
was gonna.
that
I feel like that's another. I'm curious about your, not to put too much of a stereotype on it, but I'm curious about your American perspective on that.
it's I don't know how different it is from y'all's. It's
Yeah, fair, fair.
we probably air it out a little more.
Yeah,
I'd say
yeah.
that, but
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's me. I'm endlessly fascinated because there's I was just talking about this the other day. About how like there's this stereotype of like Canadians are so nice, and it's like no, no, no. Canadians are dickheads. Canadians are just actually like just passive aggressive, and they just don't talk about anything. It's actually one of the things
hmm
I love about Americans is that they'll just say it. They're right,
yeah.
like and I really appreciate that.
Depending where you're at, so I'm down in the south, so it's something similar to that. It's very passive, even with if you can't tell because you're just listening. I'm an African American male,
Yeah,
but even with like to take it a little more dastardly, like
yeah,
racism, like
yeah,
it's so covert some places, and
yeah,
it's almost worse, like than
yeah.
the person that flat out just like, why are you walking in my store? I'm like,
Sure.
oh, okay, that's now I know where I'm at. But then there's some
Yeah.
places like you've been around these people for X amount of time. You're competing for some this personal thing that's happened to me, like,
Hmm.
and then you win, and then they're just like, actually, you can't actually win. This is like, all these little. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Didn't know at
Yeah.
the time I was younger, but then you're just like, oh, I see how it is. There's
Yeah.
one instance I brought up at work a couple years back, because they were trying to go over. They were doing one of these assessments to see like how best to reward employees,
Mm.
and I had a 0 for like um public displays of recognition, words of affirmation, whatever the topic was. And they were like, "Oh, that's weird." I was just like, "Why is that weird?" And like, "Well, you're the only. I'm not saying you're weird, but you're the only one that said like that has no bearings on you." And I remembered back to a time. It was when we were somewhere in Georgia in Grovetown Elementary School,
Yeah.
and my mom was just adamant. She's one of those people like education, education, education.
Fuck yeah.
So we would read like all the time, and I don't know if y'all have it up there in Canada. We had this thing called accelerated reader.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, something like it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that. You'd read the book, take the test.
Hmm.
So my older sister is 2 years older than me. My younger sister's 1 year younger than me. So the
Hmm.
three of us, for our grades, we all got the highest score
Fuck yeah.
for. And we're a minority at this school. We never went, we're a military family. Never went to school on
Mm.
base. We always go on the whatever nice school is next to it.
Hmm.
And there you typically it was you go on stage, you accept a reward, blah blah blah, award, and then you do get a pizza party for your class.
Hell yeah.
So we got the pizza parties for our class, but this particular year, for whatever reason, there was no public recognition. And
Mm.
one of the African American lady as well, she came like and was kind of leveled because I knew there was something up,
Yeah.
and she goes, well, what would it look like? Like there's like you're only like 5% of the population here. Like, what does it look like if three black people like won all the awards? And I was just like, I was like, what? And
Holy
then I was just like,
fuck.
and I'm a pragmatic person. So I was just like, yeah, that is fucked up. But I'm like, I get it at the same time. Like I
Sure.
understand. Like, but still.
Yeah.
And so that like things like that kind of have swirled in my head since elementary school. So
Sure.
so it's like, I don't really appreciate words of affirmation at this point. And maybe I should.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm better off for not. But I we're winded back to the point like, oh, that's where it really didn't matter anymore. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I accomplished.
Big
And
time.
that's satisfactory to me. And
Man.
people are gonna act how people are gonna act, and
It's so interesting though to think about, like, because like linking it right straight to the idea of like the words versus the actions, right? Like it's sounding to me like it's like, you kind of got a real hard lesson in don't listen to what somebody says, listen to, like, watch what they do,
yeah,
and right now, this is like a very very fresh thing for me. I'm realizing that I personally, like, I've been locked into that mode most of my life too. I've been very hyper vigilant of how people act, and I'm
yeah,
starting to realize I actually do need more verbal affirmation, even if it's just communication. But
yeah,
I'd love some validation for sure. But like, but I've been in such a mode of just watch rather than listen.
yeah,
Um, that it's like it's very hard to trust what anybody says about
for
anything,
sure, for sure.
right? And I'm curious, like, you're saying like you don't really feel like you need to break out of that, but I think on the flip side, I'm curious about like how would you go about kind of like, I don't know, opening yourself up to that element, because it's still such a big part of communication, right?
Yeah,
Right, whether it's clumsy or not, right?
it's I don't receive it how someone who's going out of their way to do it would want me to is what it
Mm.
equates to, and I'm aware of that.
Yep.
Being married will teach you some things about yourself you may not have wanted to know.
Yep.
So like somebody comes to me and they're overjoyed, they want to like express it. And I'm a good faker. I'm like, oh my god, thank you so much, but it's just like, okay, like
Sure.
I don't feel it,
Yeah.
but I receive it, for your sake, and
Sure.
that part I feel like is, maybe a little problematic, as far as, maybe a psychiatrist would say, but it's just
I was gonna
like,
say, I don't know if I'm qualified for that one, right? But yeah.
but it's just like, oh, it's working for now.
Yep.
I now listen to my wife, when she
Mhm.
says something, and then I got two little daughters, and
Aw.
they every little thing they do just like melts me. So
Yep, yep.
maybe they're the antidote.
Yeah.
They're melting my ice heart or whatever it is,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well, you
yeah,
get
it's
to
like
give it,
this
right?
slow process. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting. So, I'm divorced, but I no kids, but I'm really curious about the shift that happens. Both my brother and sister both have young kids, and
yeah,
seeing, even just from kind of like the uncle perspective, like seeing who they were before and who they are after kids, and seeing what kind of love they give their kids,
yeah,
and seeing how often, I don't even know if it's always conscious. Like sometimes they give the kind of love that, having been kids with them, I know we didn't necessarily receive.
yeah,
And I'm curious if you are conscious of that sort of gift, or if it's
yeah.
or if it's intentional.
It's you don't even it's you can't control it.
Yeah,
It's just like, and it makes you wonder, like all the people that abuse their kids and all those
yeah,
like negative situations. I'm like, how? Like, and
yeah,
obviously, somebody did it to them, but
yeah.
um, I just I don't know. Like even. the daughter whacked the 4-year-old whacked the TV with a broom. Like the day before the Super Bowl. We weren't even gonna watch it, but I remember because the Super Bowl was the next day. I'm like, well, even if I
Yeah.
wanted to watch it, I can't now. But
Yeah.
like, my wife was mad,
Yeah.
and called me. She goes, "You deal with this. I wasn't home. I was on my way back." And like anybody else, like
Yeah.
furious, And I get back and I'm just like, "What'd you do?" And she's lying and telling me like, "Oh, I don't know." And and then 5 minutes later, like
Yeah.
I discipline her, give her a little spanking or whatever,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Dad, you can fix it. You just fix it later." And I'm just like, "Oh man, like she thinks I can fix that. Like, oh look at that. She thinks I'm capable of fixing this shattered TV." And immediately I'm like no longer like mad or anything, and
Yeah.
don't even want to punish her at that point. But I'm like, yeah, gotta ground her or whatever, not let her watch Bluey or whatever on TV
Yeah. Yeah.
for a couple weeks. But yeah, you can't help it. It's just
Yeah.
it's well, I can't help it. It's
Yeah.
just it's all love.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you're a comedian?
Amongst many other things, that's one of the things.
Well,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let's do that. Let me hear your rap sheet. Who's James? What does James
Yeah.
spend his waking hours doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Okay. Let's see. How can I? How can I'm gonna try and not, you know, match the energy of yours and just authentically share
Give me at
mine.
least
Right. You know.
seven. I can
Right.
I can
Yeah.
tell from your energy. You do a lot of things. So give me at least like
Okay. Okay.
5 or 7 things.
So like
Don't be
podcaster.
modest.
Okay, so like podcaster, obviously, poet, writer, uh, reformed theater kid. But I'm trying to break back into that. I'm thinking about getting back into. I was
Right
originally an
on.
actor, thinking about getting back more into the screenwriter, playwriter mode. Yeah, last year I started practicing stand up for the first time, and I've been very, very gradually dipping my toes into that stuff. On the sort of like what pays my bills and makes sure I have a home for myself is I'm a digital instructor by day. So I basically will teach like career prep and like project management skills to recent tech grads. So I basically teach. My joke is it's a really corny dad joke. You'll love it. I teach students who know how to talk to computers how to talk to other humans.
I like it.
Right?
I like it.
Yeah. So that's those are the big tenets. And then kind of like whatever my like ADHD hyperfixation of the week is.
Right on.
Yeah. Last week it was collages. This week it's scenes. So we'll see what it is next week. Yeah.
I dig it. I dig it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is very much that thing of like are you familiar with David Lynch? Are you familiar with like his movies and stuff?
I know the name. What's name one of the?
So his big one was with the TV show Twin Peaks. Um,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I got
yeah.
you. Yeah.
So years ago, I did his his master class, and he talked about the art life, and he was like, when you live the art life, it's not about I'm just this. It's that I'm an artist,
Yeah.
and so when you open yourself up to that and you have these experiences, what you try to do is you allow them to tell you where the impulse wants to go. So like he did all kinds of stuff. He was most known as a director, but he was also a painter, a musician, all kinds of things. And so he talked a lot about like when you get an idea, don't tell it what it's going to be. Let it tell you what it wants to be, and follow that impulse. And so it's like if it wants to be
Yeah.
a song, make it a song. If it wants to be a painting, make it a painting. Don't force it to be something else, right? So that really opened me up to being like, for years I was just a writer. That was it, and now it's more like, yeah, I just try to open myself up and follow the idea and see what garbage follows.
No, I love that. That's what it is too. Cause so when I did music, I did videography. Because I was like,
Mm,
okay, like you hear what I want you to hear, but I need you to see what I'm trying to see, and I want you to
yeah.
understand what I'm trying. So it's like this whole. I feel like that's the artist, like
Hmm.
somebody express, and especially with comedy, like people just get into that, like you don't know this person. I mean, well, maybe you've seen like stuff from them, but then
Yeah.
at some point you're like, your humors match, whether
Yep.
you have the same humor or not, and they're just talking, and you're like, yeah, like subconsciously agreeing with what they're saying and
Yeah.
looking at everything through their perspective. But that's the art that I love. Where
Yeah.
you can, like, when you leave a movie theater and you're just like, oh, it's daytime, like,
Right.
because the scenes were dark.
Yeah.
The mood of the movie was dark, and yeah, I just love that, like bringing people like all the way into
Yeah.
your sphere.
It's like the flow. It's like when you really when you catch an artist who's genuinely working in like a flow state, and you
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
like come along with them. That's magic, right? Like I
top
remember
notch.
my I don't see a lot of movies in theater. I watch a lot of movies, but I don't see a lot in theaters. But I saw Dune, Dune 2 last year, and I remember coming out of the theaters. I'd seen it in IMAX, and it was really disorienting to come out because I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I was just on Arrakis for 3 hours," like where
exact.
the fuck am I now, right?
Dude, that's so with kids makes it hard. So Dune
Mm,
2 was actually the last movie I watched in theaters. 'Cause I was like, I have to watch this in theaters. This is like
yeah,
an epic movie, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, it that actually, okay, the way you're tapping into the ideas of family and some of the other things, I'm gonna just kind of like shoehorn one of my 10 questions right here because it might be kind of clumsy, but I'm just gonna
Let's
ram
do
it
it.
in right here. Um, you know, we're talking about a lot of joyful things and a lot of fun things, and and I think we'll probably swing back to a lot of them too. But you know, as we've also alluded to, like there's a lot of darkness in the world, and there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
tough shit going on, and finding that balance can sometimes be really difficult. And I'm curious for you, something where I come from with this is that it's like it's really important for me to be informed. It's really important for me to be aware, and it's also really important for me to still take care of myself first. Right? It's the idea of like you got to put your own air mask on first before you help
Yeah.
others. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's just as important for me to like find joy every day and to find relaxation every day and all those kinds of things. And so I'm really curious for you. Um, what is something that is giving you hope these days for sort of like what's keeping you going?
It's been my faith
Yeah.
for as long as I can remember, because I just, like, even like with like stuff like Trump being president, like
Hmm.
I'm the kind of person, I look at something and I run it, like I'm running an experiment like 100 times over and to the extremes. Like, where
Yep.
is this going to end up later? And the one thing, even as a kid, I can never come to grips with was like, why do like bad people get good things, good people get bad things? And I
Hmm.
wrestled with this, and faith was the solution to that.
Yeah.
And through that, like, kind of through my belief system, like, joy is what I start with. Like, there are
Mm.
things that make me happy or sad, but I always like wake up and am joyous to be alive. To
Mhm.
um, I think somebody died for me, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm well polished these days, but I should be dead. Like, I used to do the stupidest things, like, all the time. Like,
Yeah.
some to make people laugh, some to
Yeah.
see if I would survive, and some just because Wednesdays at 5 p.m. are boring,
Yeah.
so we gotta spice it up. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah, I'm on borrowed time. And speaking of like the dark and the bad, like, I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm an expert in death. Unfortunately,
Mm.
just
Mm.
two large families, mom and dad's side. And I just seen a lot of
Mm.
people go.
Yeah.
Which made me bitter, made me dark.
Mm.
Made me not appreciate people
Mm.
when I was younger. But through my faith journey now, I'm like,
Yeah.
I take opportunities, like if you pop in my head tomorrow, I'm gonna text you like,
Yeah.
dude, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
lost both my parents pretty close with each other like 5 years back,
Yeah.
and yeah, that I'm not dead,
Yeah.
so I got the greatest gift of ever. I got life, so
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's have a good day. Let's meet some new people.
Yeah.
Let's kiss my wife and my daughters, send them off to
Yeah.
school, and be happy when they get back. And I'm
Yeah.
not always joyous, but when I'm not being joyous, I'm usually pretty chill.
Yeah.
Keeping it chill, but getting negative and all that, like. we can rant about the boss making a stupid decision or
Sure.
making us work overtime or whatever, but other than that, I'm just like, man, today's a good day.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I find so I wasn't raised with any religion, but I do find myself personally still within like a spiritual context,
Yeah,
and I often find myself really I don't find myself dismissive of religion in any way, shape, or form.
yeah,
I actually at times feel a type of envy. You were talking earlier about the idea of like you kind of lean into your faith to be able to show up for things. And I've read many times that like so many artists are deeply spiritual or religious of some kind because
yeah,
it's a way for them to sort of give up their ego and be like,
yeah,
no, there's something else kind of guiding me and helping me.
yeah.
And I've just never really been able to find myself I've just never been able to fully lean into anything. I'm fully comfortable being like, there's something beyond me.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't bring myself to think that it gives too big of a shit about me, for lack of a better
See,
way of putting it,
I feel you,
right?
man. I
You
feel
know?
you. It's I mean, take it there because I feel like I should.
Mhm,
Like
mhm, mhm.
it's like with anything. Like you're trying like stand up. They try like don't believe whatever. Pray before you start doing things. Like s- hey God, like help me out with this thing. Just
Yeah,
just that. Like
yeah,
just test him. Like
yeah,
he just shows up. It's weird. Like
yeah.
I was talking to my buddy today. He moved up to Nashville. And this dude, I love him to death.
Yeah.
And I'd tell him so, and he couldn't respond. He would not say it. He'd be like, okay,
Ugh,
hop off the phone or,
you
or
know
walk out the door.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I wanna say, like, thank you because more men need to say "I love you,"
Right?
Like, that is it is an epidemic. We need to tell each other we love each other more. Anyway, I'm sorry, please go on with the story.
No,
Yeah.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that PSA. People
Yeah,
need to hear
yeah,
that, man.
yeah,
Like, if you
yeah,
love somebody, just tell them. Like,
yeah.
what bad's gonna happen from that? You
I was
know?
gonna say that's exactly it, right? Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, he just wrestled with it, and it was I don't even remember what I was about to say, but but yeah, he questions everything, and I was the same way. Like, and
yeah.
it's funny, and I love talking to him because they're the very same questions that I used to have,
Mhm,
and I just got to the point like through the death and like
mhm,
dealing that like
mhm.
I can't help myself.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that I can do, and I'm talking to people, and I had my own like era of cancel culture,
Sure, sure.
like somebody tells me to, oh, you can do your homework, and I'm like, yeah, but you forgot your book, like it's like
Yeah,
any
sure.
any flaw, I'm like, you're canceled,
Yep.
canceled, canceled,
Yeah.
and so then I was like, all right, let's challenge God next,
Yeah,
you let like all my family members pass away, and
yeah,
like I
yeah,
was just angry, and then I just started to challenge him.
yeah,
Fortunately, I did grow up in the church, so that was when everybody else was not not the answer. I was like, all right, well, let's challenge God then.
yeah,
And I just kept praying and kept like reading,
yeah.
and I got to this foundation, and it wasn't like the end of the journey, or I hadn't
Mm.
arrived or anything, but I just got to this point where like, okay, like nothing bad has happened.
Yeah,
Things are like I'm feeling better. Like, I'm not giving God the credit, but I'm good now. So
yeah,
whatever. And yeah, I kind of go back to that when things get tough.
yeah,
I mean, I walk in it, but like with anybody, like everything's not all peachy.
yeah,
Life
yeah.
is life. So
Yeah,
so when it gets super hard, that's when I like go back to that thing that worked the 100 times before, and it
yeah,
hasn't let me down. So
yeah.
till until something better, not that I'm searching, but unless something better comes along, like
Sure, sure.
that's who I am.
I love it, and I think and that's the thing is that like I think that's beautiful, and
Yeah,
I think that's wonderful, and I feel so I don't know what the right word for it is because it's like I'm so glad you have that comfort and I'm so glad you
yeah,
have that like thing to help you, right?
yeah,
And it's not like it's not an envy, it's not like a and I don't have that. It's more of like I actually find that very inspirational of like there's I think for me personally and I think for a lot of people that I know like there's a skepticism that then stops us from just like trying stuff, you know. And it's like I think there's so much interwoven with like the the different sort of like demarcations of religion and the different
Yeah.
terms and the different, right, you know. And it's like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that complex. It can just be you and whatever you want to call a higher power, right,
Yeah.
you know. And I think it's the same practice. And I think that's the other piece of it too for me personally, is that it's like you know, if there is something that big beyond us, like I can't see them really getting too bent out of shape about, like, you know, using the wrong word or the right word, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
right, you know, it's like
I have this saying that I tell myself, and then I
yeah.
tell other people when we get in. Yeah. So I write it out because it looks very. But it's if God is, then God is, and God is,
Hmm.
so God is. Which sounds like mumbo jumbo, but then you break it down. It's like, so
Yeah.
if God exists,
Yep. Then he
then
does.
he exists.
Yeah.
And if he does exist, then he exists. You know, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
like it doesn't mean anything when you just like hear it. But then
Yeah.
I break it down to somebody, and they're just like, "All right, fine." And that's why I
Yeah.
always like I told you, like, hey, just pray, see what
Yeah.
happens.
Right.
Like, just try it.
Yeah.
Like you try a new restaurant. Just keep trying, and let me
Yeah.
know how it goes for you.
I was gonna say, like, honestly, like, not that I'm in like some dire straits, but I'm like, honestly, like, I don't have a reason why not to. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like, it's like,
right,
right, like, it's like, well, and also like, what's the harm? You know, because
yeah,
whether it is you know, a divine being, or whether it's just like me tricking myself into just
right,
being more confident, at the end of the day, does that actually end up mattering? You know,
yeah.
like
And
it's
for me,
right. You know.
that's what it is for me sometimes too.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
because I'm just like I just need to say what I'm feeling out loud.
That's it. Right.
And I sometimes I say amen at the end, you know.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But
Yeah.
we're all humans. Like I don't have superpowers.
Hmm.
And I'm not good all the time, but sometimes I'm doing better, and it's more often than not. And I think that's the reason. So I keep it up. Why friendless?
Yep.
How did the title come about?
So that's yeah, you know, so the joke of it was, so the original gimmick was, and I wasn't going to put you through this part of it cuz the gimmick has long died, but when the show originally started, what I was doing was I was calling everybody up from my Facebook friend list, and we would talk about this kind of stuff. We'd talk about friendship, our friendship, these kinds of things. And at the end of the interview, we would unfriend from Facebook, and we would decide like how or if we would stay in touch afterwards, you know.
Yeah.
It was all with the intention of just getting off Facebook because I hate that website so much, you know. So sort of the gimmick of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then over the years, it evolved into, you know, I started getting people on the show who weren't on Facebook or weren't on my Facebook or whatever, and so it developed more into just an exploration of friendship and connection, and it stuck with the name because, you know, I've realized that, you know, as we talked about earlier, like there's so many more similar experiences than dissimilar to most people, and one of the real common experiences right now is people feeling like they're friendless, feeling like they're disconnected and
Yeah.
isolated, when really there are whole worlds of people just like waiting for them to show up, you know.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, it's a bit of a, yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer because it's now an exploration of how to be a friend and kind of fight that feeling of friendlessness, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Then my other question,
Mm.
and it's like one of those topics that came up. Me and the wife were talking about. Now I just ask people,
Love it.
so you'll be like the fifth person I've asked. But
Excellent.
are you as popular as you'll ever be in high school?
I love it. Oh my god. So am I as popular now as I was in high school, or like, is that what you mean it like
Like, do we all peak in high school?
oh, I sure hope not, man. I sure hope not. You know, mostly because I was a theater dork, right? You know, so it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like I sure hope high school wasn't my peak, you know? And I gotta say, I've talked about this type of thing recently with some friends, and I personally came to the conclusion of like, I kind of worry about people who peak in high school, because it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of like, to me it's the same as saying like, my wedding day was the best day of my life, because
Yeah.
it's like no. That's the start of your life,
Yeah.
like if you
Yeah.
if you you know like a wedding, obviously you want it to be a great, fun, beautiful day, but that's the
Yeah, for
beginning,
sure.
like you don't want that to be the peak, because then you got 60 years with this person who are you now slowly hating, like what's you right
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
So same thing with high school. It's like, I don't want to peak at 17. Are you kidding me? Like so
so
yeah, I sure hope
so
not,
here's the argument. Here's the argument.
Mm,
As you get older, for whatever reason, like the connections, like people don't actually know you.
yes.
So like you think of like the Rock. We'll take the Rock.
Yeah.
Like millions of followers, fans, and all that, but like
Yeah.
he's got to keep a tight circle for like actual like interactions, and
Yeah.
so like the circle has to shrink for protection, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's always people, so I'm just like, I don't know. It's something I've been like just like, oh, let me think about it, you
Yeah.
know, like.
That's
But
that's actually a really, I like that angle on it too, because it actually does circle to something I've been talking a lot about on the show, is this idea of like, over the last like 2 years especially, um, I've actually made a real like mindful point to keep my like real tight connections really small.
yeah,
Like my circle of friends is real small in terms of like, who do I let into everything, who do I always go to, um, and that does end up, especially recently, it's caused a lot of issues for me, because it's like, I felt like I've let a lot of really important connections kind of suffer for that, right?
yeah,
Right? Because yeah, in high school, early university, like it was easy, like
yeah,
it was easy to have lots of friends. It was easy to have a big, even a theater dork had a big network. I had the whole theater department, right?
yeah,
Right? So it's like, you're always, when you're in school, it's one of the cheat codes you don't realize is so helpful, but it's like, you at least all are there for something, right?
yeah,
Right? Same thing, like, I went to theater school in university, and so it's like, whether we had anything else in common, we knew we were there. We were paying an ungodly amount of money for one thing. You right?
yeah,
So at least we can rely on that, for a conversation, right? And you get out in the world, and it's like, the closest parallel to that is like your job, and that, like,
yeah,
that sucks, like,
yeah.
I don't want to talk about my job with you,
You spend
right?
so much time there. That's the worst part. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Right, and it's like, it's the last thing I want to talk about outside of work, so
yeah,
it's, so it does become a, you're not, I'll say you're not off on the analysis, but
it's
yeah,
it's a conversation for sure.
big time, yeah, but it is, ooh, I just, yeah, like I say, I gotta believe I got cooler after high school, right? And so maybe it's like, what do you define as peak? Do you define peak as like most sort of knowing yourself, or biggest social network,
N- the most people that knew you the most and you knew
Mm.
them the most.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's it. See, that throws a wrinkle into
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
because then,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
'Cause I mean, I remember back then, like, like people just say, "Hey," like I was pretty
big time.
popular.
Yep.
Partially because I stand out, like I
Sure.
said, predominantly white school,
Sure.
and partially because I don't know, I started acting the way I was a funny guy.
Yep.
But yeah, yeah, I was just like a cool person to be around. I was a
Yep.
prankster and all that.
Yep.
So, but I was nice. Like
Yeah.
one thing the wife just will not listen to. She was like, "I bet you bullied people." I was like, "No, I didn't." Like I was like, "People like me because I was nice." She goes, "You weren't
Yep.
nice." I was like, "Whatever." I want to like get a time machine. That's where I'd go back to high school and like let
Yeah.
let the wife walk around, and she goes, "I bet you were a little dickhead all the time." I was like, "No, I was super nice."
Now that's a movie I'd watch. A man invents a time machine, not to like solve world history problems, but just to prove to his wife he was nice
Yeah.
in high school, right? That's a good story.
Yeah.
Oh man. That really does circle me to the sort of the big question of the show, and it's the thing I'm always interrogating. I've been doing this for almost 8 years, asking, really, as I said earlier, it started with these questions of like, have I been a good friend, and how have I shown up as a friend, and to answer that, I've then had to figure out what it even means to be a good or
Yeah.
bad, or right, it's another one of those words like community that can mean anything and everything, and so I ask you, from your personal experience and sort of how you show up, what does it mean to be a friend?
Um, Sharing, time, words, experiences, and we talked about this last week in my little, Bible study group. But there's vulnerability is like the best. Like that's a shortcut to building any relationship.
Yeah.
And there's two ways to do it. There's two sides of the coin. You can be vulnerable and share your personal experience, things that have happened to you, or you can gossip
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talk about somebody else's. So that's like the dark side, which I'm trying. That's like my latest thing. Past I don't know how long, but I'm like trying to be very conscious of. That's what I'm praying about when I go pray.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
help me not to gossip because I know it's a cheat code. Like because we're
Yeah.
sharing these deep things. Like let me like increase my vulnerability and
Mm.
boldness to share with people, and then decrease
Sharing
my
others'
gossip. Yeah,
vulnerability.
yeah, other
Yeah.
people's vulnerability, like because
Yeah.
it's
It's not your
not
story to
cool.
tell, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the secret. You can choose the light or the dark side on it, but it's gonna work either way you go.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I was thinking,
Yeah.
in university, I was really obsessed with Saul Williams, who, poet, rapper, incredible guy.
Saul Williams.
Saul Williams, Saul. Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta look it up.
yeah. He's incredible, incredible poet. Um, um, and he has, it's an extended verse, but the punctuation of it is essentially he's saying, like, you could have all the guns and the bombs and the knives you want, but at the end of the day, vulnerability is the truest power you can have. To be genuinely vulnerable is to actually wield the real power of the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that for 20 years. Is like, how do
Yeah.
I just keep being that, right? And it's scary, though. It's fucking scary, right?
Yeah. And those are your favorite people too.
Yeah.
The people are like. So I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what I like, and seek out in people and feel comfortable around. Like
Hmm.
then I can do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And isn't that the way too? It's like, as soon as people start showing themselves, you want to show yourself more, right?
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, yeah. Zazu, yeah. Oh man, this has been such a fucking blast. Thank you so much.
Dude,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
looking forward to this, man.
Same.
I'm excited.
Yeah, no, same. Yeah, and yeah, that Codenames round was so much fun. Like,
Yeah.
just what a blast. And yeah, the moment you reached out right after, I was like, I've been excited the whole time. I was giddy for this, and it lived up to the expectations.
Yeah, I
Right,
appreciate it,
right,
man.
yeah. Um,
We'll have to do it again, man. And if and when I start
100%.
mine, I'll have to have you.
100%. Yeah. Before we wrap up, where can listeners find you? Where would you like to point people to?
It is Zazu X2 Games, and then all the social media stuff. I think if you just type in Zazu times two or that, you'll just find stuff I've done on the internet. So
Right on, right
yeah,
on. I'll make sure that's all in the show notes as well.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Appreciate it.
Very last thing, I always like to leave listeners on a little actionable step that they can try out. So, what do you think is one thing listeners could try doing this week to be a more effective friend to themselves or to their community?
Um, this will help you build a community. All those people you have a bunch of contacts in your phone right now. Those are pages of a notebook.
Mm.
Next time you need to remind yourself to do something, don't put it in your notes. Text it to somebody that you haven't texted in a while. Like, oh, I got to pick up oranges today, and yeah, let the conversation roll. It's a technique I use sometimes when I feel like I'm not connecting with enough people. I use my contact list as a notepad.
That is incredible. You've added new wrinkles to my brain. Like, I feel like I've like what a fantastic way to, like, yeah, remember something, but also like connect to somebody, and like it can be as simple as that, can it? It's like, hey, I've got to
Yeah,
go down,
yeah.
I've got to go get milk. You want to come with me? Right? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
man.
yeah.
That's how I hooked women back in the day. They're just we would just hang out and we'd never stop, They'd be
Yeah,
like, "Oh, are you dating her?" I'm like, "No, she just is
comes
cool with doing the
grocery
same things that
shopping.
I'm doing." Yeah, like she needed milk too.
Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Thank you for that. I'm gonna try that one for sure.
Do it, man.
Yeah,
Will
yeah,
change your life.
yeah, yeah. Zazu, one more time, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been just such a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you
uh,
so much for having me. I really appreciate it, man. It's been a great conversation.
100%. And now enjoy your games night.
Will do.
And that's it. Thank you one more time to Zazu for joining me and sharing his incredible insights. I have to be honest, his perspectives have had a genuine impact on me since we recorded this interview, and I just really want to express how deeply grateful and how lucky I feel to have connected with him. If you enjoyed this episode, please do all the things that help keep independent podcasts alive. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review if you're feeling generous, and share the show with someone who might need a reminder that they're not as friendless as they might feel. Your support means the absolute world to me and helps more people discover these conversations, which really is kind of what community is all about. Want to give me a follow over on Instagram and TikTok at FriendlessPod. If you have any questions, any listener questions you want answered on an upcoming solo show, please email me, friendlesspod@gmail.com. And if you just can't get enough Friendless, if you want more content, be sure to sign up for the monthly Substack newsletter. It's chock full of all kinds of goodies. You're going to love it. And it's free. Who's going to say no to free? Am I right? But that's going to do it for me. So let's wrap things up here. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope I'm going to catch you back here next week with a brand new episode. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. And neither should you. Why? Because that is then. And this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweet peas.